Saluditos, mi gente de Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Combat Sports y Pro Wrestling, que es la que hay. Les habla Isa, la Demon Diva, y hoy me encuentro con la mitad del equipo en pareja de Bushwhackers, y también me encuentro con John Crowder, el autor del libro de ellos. First of all, I want to thank you both so much for your time and joining me here on Lucha Libre Online. How are you guys today?
Fantastic, Isa. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we are very, and on behalf of Butch, he's in another world at the moment, so we can't, but on behalf of him, thank you very much for having us.
No, thank you. The pleasure and the honor is all mine to speak with a Hall of Fame legend such as yourself, Luke, and with the background that you have going on right now, and me doing this interview live from Puerto Rico, I want to get started by asking you about the time that you guys spent here in Puerto Rico wrestling for WWC, because I know that was before your WWEF. You guys spent plenty of time here. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the first time I came in for Carlos Colon was around 1980, you know, a friend of mine invited us down there, a guy called Frenchy Martin, who had been in New Zealand in the 70s, and that we'd been over in Canada, and I'd met Carlos Colon in Stu Hart's territory, you know, Bret Hart's father's territory called Stampede. I met him there in 1973, I think 72 or 73, and Victor Jovica there at the same time. So it was, you know, in French, he mentioned to me in 1980 about coming to Puerto Rico. He said there's Carlos Colon would like you to come into WWC. And at that time, we were working for NWA for the Charlotte office. That was the NWA office out of North Carolina. And at that time, I didn't realize we were on Turner Network, TBS, and TNN and all that. So I said, I gave the promoter 3 months notice, and I didn't know the politics at the time. I didn't realize that was the biggest promotion in North America at the time, and you didn't give him notice. He's the one that gave you notice.
Oh.
He's the one that gave you notice, and he says, I'd like you to finish up at Christmas. He would say to the boys, I'll finish you up in a month's time, and I'll bring you back in 2 years. Well, we gave him notice, and at that time, we had the belts. We had the Mid-Atlantic tag belts, and we were getting a push. You know, a push means, you know, moving us up the card to the top and that, and here I am giving notice to them to go to Puerto Rico, which was a bad, in the long run, we found out that was a bad mistake.
Oh, no.
We came down to work. Well, we were doing 3,000 miles a week, over 3,000 miles in a car. And when Frenchie called us, he said, you'll be doing 200 miles a week. And you're only working 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you'll be doing 2 shows on Sunday. And boy, when we heard that, after working every day in the Carolinas for NWA, you got up in the morning, you went to the gym, you hopped in a car, drove to the show, drove home or drove to the next town, did the same every day. There was no free time.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're in Puerto Rico, where we didn't go to work till Friday. We sat on the beach. We sat on the beach every day, and even on the days we worked, we sat on the beach till Friday and Saturday. We sat on the beach till about 4 o'clock, and then packed our bags and went to the show. Sunday we did a double shot. We actually did every Sunday. We did Aquadia at 2 o'clock, and we did Ponce at 8 o'clock, at 7 o'clock.
Well, that's a drive. That's a drive.
No, you mean that's a drive? That's nothing. When you're doing 3,500 miles a week and you're driving to Aquadia and then to Ponce and back to San Juan, that's nothing.
Agreed, especially with the territories that you were working right before you came to WWC. Did you have a favorite beach here in Puerto Rico?
And drinking pina coladas.
Now, look, I know you have a lot of fascinating stories, and the thing that makes me very happy about this interview, and the reason why John is joining us, is because there is a book that is out now. Fans can go out and get it. Bushwhackers, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It is available on Amazon right now. John, I wanted you to tell me a little bit about the process of writing these books and hearing these fascinating stories that the Bushwhackers have to tell.
Yeah, well, first I'll kind of show off the cover for everybody out there. It's a fantastic photo of actually when Luke and Butch were wrestling as the sheep herders. George Napolitano, who's a famous magazine writer and photographer, he allowed us to use that photo. But I'll tell you, it was a real treat. Growing up as a kid, I grew up in Florida, so I'm not that far from Puerto Rico. And I was used to the sheep herders actually coming into Florida in the Florida territory. And I've become friends with Luke over the years. And I've been writing comics actually for pro wrestlers. So when he approached me at the start of COVID and asked if I'd be interested in writing actually the autobiography for him and Butch, it was like a dream come true. I mean, it's one thing to, see these guys on TV and even to see them at conventions or become friends with them. But to be able to spend, which I did, 1.5 to 2 years, every Wednesday night for about, like we're doing now, for about 2 hours, every Wednesday night, chatting on the phone like this and recording and just hearing their stories. I mean, from basically from the day they were born until, they walked into the WWE Hall of Fame. It was such an experience, such a wonderful experience. And then we just put all that in paper. So I think when fans get this book and they read it, you're going to see, because I was literally talking to these guys and getting the stories verbatim from them, that when you read the book, it reads like it's them talking. And you'll hear stories, everything from New Zealand to Puerto Rico, throughout Asia, into Canada. A funny story that always stands out to me is they were wrestling for a brief time in Hawaii. This is before they ever got to Puerto Rico. And Roddy Piper asked them or invited them to come into Portland. And Luke said, well, we've never been to the States before. We'll need to get our passports. And he goes, you're already in the States. So they were in Hawaii. They didn't even realize they had gotten to the United States yet. So it's just some really fun, some fun stories. Of course, when they were in Puerto Rico, they were probably one of the most violent tag teams that the world has ever known. So they've covered both sides. Yeah.
I got to cut you off here. You called us the sheep herders. Well, the Spanish word for that is Los Pastores.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
That's one of about 50 Spanish words I now know. So we do refer to them as Los Pastores in the book. So we cover those stories, and I'll tell you, those were some of the wildest stories I have ever heard from any professional wrestler. Are the things that those guys went through in their different travels through Puerto Rico, because obviously they were down there on several different occasions.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the book. I'm so excited about all the stories that are to be told there. The book is now out and available on Amazon. Luke, how was it seeing your work being recognized and getting inducted into the Hall of Fame class of 2015? How did that feel for you guys?
Well, when I heard that we're going to get inducted, I said to the office, when they called me, I said, about bloody time.
Yes.
I said, about bloody time. A lot of the people, the northern people in the US said, why are they putting these two comedy guys into the Hall of Fame? They didn't realize, they started seeing us as the Bushwhackers in 1988. They don't realize that we started going overseas in 1966. Mm-hmm. We started going to, Australia and in 1968, 69 to Singapore and Malaysia, Penang, Kuala Lumpur, and all around that area. If they get their teeth into the book, they'll soon see when we first went over to that area. There was a war going on in in Malaysia, it was Malaya and Asia. One part of it was called Malaya and the other was the Asia. Now it's called Malaysia. But there was a war for independence going on at the time. And we used to drive up through the jungle and there was a curfew 5 o'clock. But we didn't care about the curfew. And you could hear in the bush, you could hear, da, 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 da. You could hear the guns. You could hear them fighting. It was crazy. Elephants roadside working the sugar cane and the rubber trees and that. You know, the Asian elephant is a small elephant. The bullocks pulling the hose for turning the ground over for planting food and corn, whatever they planted there. And that it was a different world. There was no machinery. It was all elephants and bullocks pulling stuff in that cart and wooden carts and that. The bullocks were pulling the carts. If you know what a bullock is, you know what a bullock is?
I don't.
Explain it to her, John.
A bullock? Well, I'm a little concerned because I know what a bollock is in England.
No, a bullock. The animal instead of it's between
like an ox, like an oxen.
Yeah, like an ox.
Okay, I see. I think I know what you're talking about.
The oxes were doing all the works.
You had me a little concerned talking about bollocks.
Your bollocks. How's your bollocks, John?
Look, I want to ask you about, since you are such an old school guy, right? You've been doing this for so long. Are you keeping tabs with Today Wrestling, and how do you feel about the landscape in the tag team division, the tag team wrestling in the world today compared to what it was like when you got started?
Well, there was in our era, there was a lot of tag teams. Guys had got together and developed good tag teams. Today, the promotion just puts two guys. 1 minute they're singles, working a single on the television. Next minute, the promotion puts them with another guy and they're a tag. And if it doesn't click, they pull them apart. WWF have got a few tag teams now. Funny part is they've got about 3 black tag teams. They've got a New Day. They've got the party guys. What do they call? I forget their names and that. They've got, the tag team business is not like it was before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The tag team business was strong before. Vince Sr., before we went there, but Vince Sr. had tag teams on top in WWF. And that with Vince Jr., he would never have tag teams on top. Tag teams would be in the middle of the card. If he wanted to make a tag team, he would put Hulk Hogan with the Ultimate Warrior just for a couple of weeks or a month. You know what I mean? And then he'd break them up again. Tag teams were used, as entertainment in the middle of the card.
Right.
Yeah, the Road Warriors, they used a bit up on the card a bit, but Demolition. When I was there was a lot of tag teams, and they were great tag teams because they were built in the territorial days before Vince took over in 83, 84. There was 25 territories, counting Puerto Rico and North America, which ran 5 to 7 days a week. And you could go from one territory to another, or one promotion to another promotion.
Right.
Which we did. We went on top around from Canada right down to Puerto Rico as main eventers on all different promotions.
Right. It's a different landscape today.
Now that's where the book got. We got the blood and the sweat are from the days, the Los Pastores and the sheep herders, and then the cheers, CHEERS. Is that when we went to the WWF? Now the people are cheering us.
Yeah, so you went through it all.
hey, Isa, I also want to add, because Luke doesn't mention, you mentioned Luke's been around the business for a long time. Believe it or not, he is currently the second oldest active in-ring wrestler in the world right now.
I did not know that. That's a big accomplishment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the great Kochika is #1. He's the Japanese guy,
Yes.
and I'm #2.
And you still have a lot to go.
7 decades. I've been in the business for 7 decades.
Yep.
John, you want to let the fans of Lucha Libre Online know where they can find the book?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, you know, we as I mentioned to Issa earlier before we came on, we initially did a Kickstarter, which is a site for crowdfunding for pre-orders of books. But the book is now available all over the world on Amazon. I learned today, if you Google the book, you can also find it on Walmart.com. You can also find it on BarnesandNoble.com. So if you've got access to a computer or a phone that can get you online, you just got to type in the name, The Bushwhackers, Blood, Sweat, and Cheers. And again, you'll find it wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're in the Americas, if you're in Europe, if you're even in Asia, I think right now you can even get it down there. So anywhere you are, if you want to hear these stories, read these stories, and learn about what the Bushwhackers did, not only as the Bushwhackers, but as the sheep herders, as Los Pastores, and also before that as the New Zealand Kiwis. Get this book. I mean, you will not regret it. I guarantee you're going to love it.
It's a bit of there's not much in-ring wrestling in it. It's all the stories behind the scenes, and where we're in different Panama, different countries, and we've got in the drug business. I've got to cover in the drug business. And then one night we were driving through, I think from Panama to Venezuela, and we thought that it was the army coming and stopped us on the road. It was what do they call, John? One of the people called the bandits.
The bandits, yeah.
What do they call those now? We thought they're all in camouflage and that, but they were the banditos, and then they held up the company for money to let us go from A to B. We were traveling through the night, and they blocked us off, and the television company had to pay them off to let us through. Now, what do they call now? What do they call those guys?
The bad guys.
I call them the scary guys.
Yeah, exactly. But the book, like Luke says, the book has a little bit of wrestling, a lot of sex, drugs, rock and roll, and guns. I mean, it's everything you can imagine.
I want to thank you both so much for your time. Look, it was an honor and a pleasure speaking to you. John, thank you so much for your time. I cannot wait to read the book. Fanáticos de Lucha Libre Online, ya lo saben que pueden recoger el libro en Amazon.com. Pueden comprarlo por ahí, escuchar todas las historias que ellos tienen que contar para Lucha Libre Online. Fue Isa, la Demon Diva. Muchas gracias. Thanks again, guys, for your time.
Thank you, Isa.
Thank you, darling.